Overtired. So tired. Overtired.
Hello, welcome to a very special Overtired. I am Brett Terpstra. I am here with Christina Warren and Jeff Severns Guntzel. And this week we have the long-promised special guest, Cory O'Brien, author of Two Truths and a Lie. How's it going, Cory?
It's going great. Happy to be here.
Hi, Cory. We're all going to take rounds saying hello.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to talk about the book. I have filled Cory in on kind of our usual format, and he's down for playing along with what we usually do.
Awesome.
So, I feel a little weird jumping right into mental health corner. I want a little bit more robust of an intro. So, Cory, tell us a little about you.
Sure. It's a big question.
It is.
But-
I'm sorry that was so vague.
Tell me who you are.
It's all right. I am a writer, game designer, man about town.
Oh, that's you I saw.
Yeah, I'm all over the place. You see a guy, that's me.
That's you.
Watching you, counting your teeth.
Excellent.
I used to write a website called Myths Retold, where I would tell mythology like it was 3 a.m. and I was drunk in a chat room. And I did that for many years, parlayed it into a small level of notoriety that somehow got my publisher to pitch me to everyone as the beloved internet humorist, which I still find kind of embarrassing. But then over time, like what I've always wanted to do is write books. And so over time, sort of parlayed the notoriety from the blog into a career writing for video games. I've written for a comedy dating sim called Monster Prom, and then my favorite game that I worked on is Hollow Vista, but you can only play it if you have an iPhone, unfortunately, which I don't. I haven't even played it in its native environment. I've played it in like a browser version, but and now I work for like fancy 3D games, writing dialogue trees and stuff. But my number one passion is writing books, and I'm very excited that I finally have this novel out. And so that brings me to this present moment.
So
Excellent.
how I guess what was your process, I guess, moving from have you been like, I guess, like writing short stories like your whole life? I know you've done the humor thing and you've worked game stuff, but what was, I guess, your process of transitioning to fictional like narrative writing?
I have been writing stories for as long as like I knew that was a thing you could do. And I used to write a number of short stories. I went to graduate school for creative writing. I wrote
There
a
you
lot of
go.
short stories then. Yeah, I left that part out.
Yeah, that's an important piece.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say
yeah.
that helps.
But I don't think that graduate school certainly gave me a lot of opportunity to practice writing.
Right.
But I don't think it turned me into a writer. I think
No,
that,
you already were,
yeah.
but I think the opportunity to practice is probably helpful.
Yeah, and also meeting people and being in an environment where that's encouraged. I really think of graduate school as like paying an enormous amount of money to LARP that you have the job that you wanted to have for like 2 years.
Yeah.
which
I like
is-
that.
I had the luxury of being able to do that. But what I have always specifically wanted to do is write long form narrative. I wanted to write novels. I don't know exactly what it is. I think my best explanation for why is that the stories that have affected me the most, that have given me like a real physical, visceral reaction, have been books, because they can set something up over a long period and then like bring it all together at once in this rush. And so that's always been really exciting to me. And so that's always been what I wanted to do. And I just basically spent many years working myself up to that, because writing books is hard.
Writing books is like existential. I've never written a book, but everyone I know that has, it's a journey. It's a dark journey sometimes, a lovely journey. Was that true for you?
Yeah. I'm sure that there are some people, I mean, I know that there are some people for whom books are just like They just write them. They just write
Jeremy
books.
Robinson. Jeremy Robinson puts out a book like every 2 months, and they're bangers. And I don't know how anyone does that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have sort of come to grips with the fact that is not my temperament. Like, I do like writing. Eventually, I do like the stuff that I write when I have enough distance from it. But it is a process, especially because I'm always doing so many things. Maybe if I was locked in a room like they did with Douglas Adams later in his career, I could just like write a book real fast. Generally write the first draft really fast and then like go insane trying to write the future drafts.
Ooh,
and really
let's-
tear myself
Oh
apart.
my God, I have so many process questions. I'm going to hold
Well,
them.
let's make this our mental health corner. Let's make it all about Cory.
Yeah.
And I would be curious to know what your mental health was like while writing this last book and what it's like now that it is officially released.
Whoa. That's a good question. I don't want to be the only person doing a mental health check-in, though.
No, we'll all
Okay.
we
We can
all
all
go.
go.
We'll all go.
Okay.
Do you want to go first or last then?
Well, I'm in your house, so I'll do whatever the dumb thing is.
Okay, I'll go first. I'll kick it off. I'll keep mine short. My job, we talked last week at length about how messed up my job situation was. I went to therapy for it, and my therapist was very helpful in helping me see that my manager that I have so many conflicts with also had some IFS type parts coming up. And we were able to kind of hit like a working flow, but at the same time, and don't tell my manager this is private.
I think you're telling your manager this,
but
that's fine.
I reached out to one of the first managers I ever had who had gotten moved off. There was a whole, like the first major shakeup was when she got moved off to another team. And I talked to her and I said, hey, here's what I'm doing these days. Do you know any other teams that might be able to use that skill set? And she's like, well, I could. And her headcount is frozen right now, but she thinks she might be able to make an exception. So problem might be solved just by going to work for a manager I already respect and I already get along with. And that alone, just knowing that's a possibility, has made it easier for me to deal with the present, and to not be in a constant state of panic and frustration. So yeah, things are better this week.
Good.
That's awesome. What a
Yeah.
good thing to hear.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Who's got the birds? It's such a nice sound.
I thought that was you.
No, fuck no, man. We got nothing out
I
here.
think that must be Cory then.
Yes, it is.
Thanks for bringing the birds, Cory. The
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
worries. It's
tropical Chicago breeze.
Well, and he's got the tropical shirt on too, so it's just kind of
Yeah.
a
Is
it's
it the
very
shirt? Is it
pleasant.
the shirt
It's a
I'm
nice vibe.
eating?
It is. It's the
This is-
shirt. The weather here has been wildly unpredictable. This is the time of
Same,
year where you
same.
really can't predict what the weather is going to be from moment to moment. And
It
so,
was
Yeah.
almost
yeah.
80 here yesterday, and
Oh my gosh.
tonight it's gonna snow.
Yeah, that happened a couple weeks ago here, 80 into snowing. And so you see a lot of people around here when it's 80 degrees wearing a sweatshirt because they're like, don't
Right,
trust
because
it.
you don't know.
Don't
No.
trust it.
It's
God.
still March.
Yeah.
That's still March. No, I mean, and that's the worst because at least for me anyway, like my sinuses, my allergies really go badly when there's sudden weather changes. So if it
Mhm.
goes from like really cold to really hot, or like and the barometric pressure changes, like my migraines go crazy, my sinuses go nuts.
My
So yeah.
POTS and my dizziness get way worse with the barometric changes. Like today with the barometer shifting the way it is, I'm like, it's like I'm drunk walking around the house. I'm tipsy everywhere. But anyway, Jeff, why don't you go?
This happens every year when it's this time, but yesterday when it was 75, the rest of the week is 40s. But I officially opened up my workshop and it's all completely ready for projects. Cory, I have a workshop where I rebuild very old machinery and I do some welding and woodwork and just general fuckery. And it's like my favorite thing in the world. It's my favorite place to be. And I feel most landed in that place. And in a time like this, especially being able to kind of open that up and just be sitting in there, it's the best. Then I get to return to a project I started in the fall, which is rebuilding this 100-year-old lathe for doing metalworking. It's about 2 tons,
Wow.
and it's I cleared out grease from the Harding administration when I was cleaning it, and now I'm at the kind of rebuilding point, and it's awesome. And so I bring that here. I mean, of all the other things, whether it's medications, therapy, just generally taking care of myself, having a place like that where I feel that landed is such a huge thing. The problem, which I won't go into now, but maybe future episodes, is I am in a protracted war with a squirrel that insists on living in my garage. And I've been taking a lot of video. My wife is constantly catches me outside arguing with the squirrel. And it has become a defining part of my life over the last, I think, week and a half. As of yesterday, it chewed through a fucking window frame to get back in. I respect this squirrel. And it's maybe giving me, this is mental health. It might be giving me a lesson in resilience and durability in a hard time. So
Yeah.
there's my check.
Have you seen he's an engineer. He's super charismatic. I can't remember his name. He made the glitter bomb.
Oh, like Mark Rober? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
glitter
He's
bomb.
the
Who
best.
made
Didn't
the,
he,
made the
was he the
squirrel
one who,
obstacle course?
yeah, the squirrel obstacle course.
So good. So good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll link that in the show notes for anyone who hasn't seen it. It is very entertaining.
That's
I-
awesome.
Yeah, I am sorry that you're having like this. It seems like the squirrel is winning your battle. I am sorry for that.
Yeah,
So
mentally.
far, but the situation is fluid.
I just think it's sick that you have a workshop. That's something that I
Same.
aspire to for sure. Like
It's,
I
yeah.
definitely want that.
It's a lovely place to be.
I don't have a place for one, or I would start like as I'm able to afford machinery, I would start building a workshop. I would love to get into woodworking. I would love to get into metalworking. Like I'm super jealous.
Come up here. I'll teach you
Yeah.
how to weld.
I know how to weld. I know how to lathe.
Oh yeah, you welded in school, didn't you?
Yeah, like I know how to do most of that stuff. I'm a little rusty, but I can do it. I just don't have any access to the tools. So
Yep, got it.
You
Got
can
it.
teach me how to weld. I don't know how to
Come
weld.
on over. You're
Hell
7
yeah.
hours away.
Hell yeah.
With my car.
what kind of welding do you like, Jeff?
Oh, I do what is known as the hot glue gun of welding, which is MIG welding.
Yep. Okay.
I would love to learn TIG, but I don't have. Yeah, it's not my time.
I find acetylene torch welding to be very meditative.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you've never done it on heroin, let me tell you, that is
Yeah, I haven't tried that.
that
yet,
is
but,
the most relaxed you'll ever be.
Okay. Okay. I'm just gonna throw this out there for any of our past or future advertisers. Do not do heroin and weld. Like we're not recommending that.
It's like I
No.
disagree.
I have multiple art pieces around my house that beg to differ.
I think when one has an addiction, everything you do with the addiction alongside. Right?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
kinda-
saying. I'm just saying. I don't like.
This is the do
Corey,
not try at home warning.
Corey, if it wasn't obvious, I have a history of drug addiction.
Okay. Yeah, I was picking that up.
You're tracking with that.
Man,
All right.
those writers don't miss a thing.
So Christina, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I don't have a huge update, I guess. And I don't want to talk. I don't want to get into the specifics of anything. But I started a new job, and it's been going pretty well. But it has been a transition, and it's been a little bit difficult because my team is all located in other places, and so I feel sort of isolated from people because I have meetings and stuff, and I get to meet people like over a video call. But I haven't met anyone in person yet, except for a few of the folks that I worked with before, but I don't work with them day in and day out in the new job. And so, but I had a nice meeting with my manager this week. I'm feeling a little bit better about things, but it's just been sort of a process. And so that's just been kind of my general mental health for the last probably 6 weeks or so, is just like a lot of changes, a lot of adjustments, a lot of trying to figure out new systems, new ways of working, as well as new expectations and all of that. And then doing it in an environment where, you aren't like physically with people, is, um, it's challenging, but I mean, it's not insurmountable or anything, but it's different than than the experiences I've had before. Like I've worked, more remotely from my other team members frequently, but usually there were either more opportunities to get to know people, like in a non-work or even work context, or you at least had like one person that you knew like in real life, so you could kind of use that as a way to kind of bridge stuff. This has been a little bit different, and so that's been the thing that I've kind of been struggling with because and I have even greater empathy for people who like started new jobs in 2020 when everybody was completely isolated and remote, because I don't know, I don't think I would have been able to survive that, especially if I wouldn't have been able to go outside. Like I don't think that I would have been okay with that at all. But no, but things are improving, and I like my manager a lot, and I'm hopeful about kind of like where things are going. Is just a lot of trying to sort out, okay, what are the things that I need to do? What are the things I want to do? How do all of these systems work? How can I influence getting to know and get to meet the right people? Because it is just a completely different world that I'm in from, what I was used to before, which I knew the systems and the people really well. So it's
Can
just been
I
an adjustment.
can I ask a personal question?
Yeah.
And tell me if I dig too deep. Because this question could be a trigger for me. But so when I'm in situations where I'm dealing with so many unknowns in like my professional life, in my personal life, I become very, we'll say, inaccessible. Like
Mhm.
I just don't have room to be a good partner. And I end up leaning on my partner very heavily to like help me regulate all the stress. How are you doing with all of these unknowns, with all of this like I I mean it's stressful, whether
Yeah.
it's like a rough situation or not, it's stressful figuring all this out. How are you doing at home?
I'm okay. I mean, I think that things could be better, but I think things are okay. I think that I'm probably similar to you in that I just don't have as much space to be able
Yeah.
to give to other things, and so even not at home, just like my other relationships, frankly, have kind of fallen off a little bit. Like some of them, my more like surface like friendships, like the group chats are pinging like 1,000 times a day, and that's really helpful. But like anything more substantive, I don't really have space for that
Yeah.
at the moment. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a good
Is your
observation.
partner forgiving about that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Cool.
there's also not really um a choice in the matter, if that makes any
Sure.
sense.
Sure. That doesn't yeah, that doesn't always mean it's easy, but yeah. Okay. Thank you. Um, all right. Cory, you are no longer the only one to go.
All right. Hell yeah. Thank you. Thank you for showing me the way.
Oh, yes. Yes. Come along further. Now let us go to this room.
Uh, yeah. So this month has been a maelstrom of events and responsibilities and travel, and the highest emotional highs and the lowest lows. I um I take medication for bipolar. I I feel
Welcome to the
weird about
club.
I feel weird about saying specific brand names because I feel like I'm advertising, but I will
Sure.
say that I took antidepressants, various antidepressants for a long time, and none of them really felt like they were doing anything. And that taking just like a relatively low dose of a bipolar medication completely changed the game for me. Like I used to struggle a lot with suicidal ideation, and just like the smallest things would send me into a pit of despair. And I'm doing a lot better with that. The problem is I'm very dependent on that medication, and so if I forget to take it for a day, like there will come a time in the next day where I will just completely crater and not know why for several hours, and then be like, oh, I
Yeah.
see. that happened to me a couple of days ago, and it coincided with me trying to like work on my next creative project, and like ending up lying on the floor being like, why am I even doing this? This is so fucked. Why did I even try and do this in the first place? It's broken. It's going to take me 7 more years. And then like, it wasn't until like I had to go do something else. I had to go pick up my little brother. And I was like driving on the way there, and I was like, oh, I see what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I
Uh,
think we've all had those moments, like if you're on something, especially if it had like a shorter half life, where you start to feel either the withdrawal effects or like the lack of the medicine working, one or the other, and you're like, oh, okay, this
yeah.
is what's going on.
Right.
It's not to compare the two because they're different, but it is some similar. Like there will come a time, like every month, where I will be like going through something emotional or feeling a certain way, and I'll be like, oh, right, right, right. Okay, I'm on my period. That's what this is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I think it is similar. I think it's because it takes a little bit for my conscious mind certainly to catch up to whatever the sort of chemical state of my mind is.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have to mention names, but I will because it is generic. But I take lamotrigine for bipolar, and
So do I.
there you go.
That's 3 of 4 of us.
And
Christina, we can
our,
send you some.
our
I'm
guest.
good. I'm good.
No,
but-
don't
but-
take some.
right.
Because it's true that part of the problem is the withdrawal. Like I
Yeah,
do feel weird that I'm like
that's where
fully
I was gonna
addicted
go.
to it.
Yep, that's where I was going to go because our guest last week also takes lamotrigine. So this is basically a lamotrigine podcast at this point.
Is this the lamotrigine corner now?
But
maybe?
I will get, if I miss my dose of lamotrigine, it'll take about 8 hours, but I will get all skin crawly and it'll feel like withdrawal,
Yeah.
and I'll get crabby and cranky, and then the mood swings will like, I
Mhm.
won't regulate as well. Like ups become real ups and downs become real downs. And yeah, like I have gone, there have been times I have not realized I missed a dose until the next dose 24
Right.
hours later.
Because you
Yeah.
didn't feel it.
Yeah.
I was on an antidepressant, venflexline, Effexor, I guess would be the professional name or the commercial name, and I'm not on this anymore, so this is not a advertisement. But I was on it for like the better part of 20 years, and it has an incredibly short half life, like to the point that it's a problem. Like you will feel the withdrawal like quick, and it is a bad withdrawal. And so I had to get very good about not forgetting my meds, because it would be like 4 hours that you would start to like, I would start to feel like, like wanting to peel my skin off, and like the bitchiness would like come out like times 10, and it would be like, oh, okay, to the point that actually that medicine wasn't working for me anymore, and I needed to get off of it. And like it was a very protracted process to get off of it because the withdrawal was like not great. But so, which is all to say, like, everyone, like, take meds with the right schedule. Like, don't fuck up your body.
Yeah, this is a frequent
Yeah.
topic for us. Take your
Well,
meds.
I think
Take your meds on the right schedule and the smallest amount that you could get away with, in my personal opinion.
1000%. Yeah, I agree.
And I
agree.
think even pulling back from specifics, I think one of the hard things about I think my first experience with medication was around 2020, like that. 2020 is what we're going to call it. And I think that like what usually leads to, in my case, what leads to me being, prescribed a medication is something that I start to realize is like really off, but maybe can be helped, rather than just being this like static thing that's part of me. And so then you get the medication and there's a little bit of relief if it's working. And I think I let my guard down a little bit, and I forget to sort of be witness to myself. And usually then when I notice something similar to what you were saying, Cory, is it's like, yeah, and Brett, it's the point at which my skin is crawling, and then I'm like, oh my God, how did I miss this? And I just like think that experience. I was diagnosed with bipolar in 2021, and one thing that came out of that was just wonderful is I learned a lot about red flags. I learned a lot about where I could trust myself, but more importantly, where I could trust that I couldn't trust myself. Which was painful at first, but then became kind of, I don't know, it's great. It's like, and I look for those opportunities now inside of these experiences to be like, okay, what have I learned about myself, and how can I hold that without this context of I'm broken, right? It's just kind of like, anyway. But the specific to the lamotrigine, if I'm 36 hours out or less from having taken one, I am a mess. It is a very, very unpleasant experience. So
It's
let
very
us all
scary.
remember. Yeah, it's scary.
It's very
It is scary.
scary to be dependent on something like that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
We talk
Yeah.
about that a lot too. Like there's like the at least for me anyway, the dichotomy between like knowing you need these things to function and to live, and then like also being dependent on these things, where, you know, like at least in my mind, like I have this stupid notion like, oh, I should be able to just control this myself, and it's like, no, but you actually can't. That's not how the biology works, and that's not how, like, you know, like brain chemistry works. We can't just, you know, will ourselves into these things. That's not possible. But at the same time, knowing it's like, okay, there are these things that we put into our bodies that can have positive or negative, you know, impacts on how we act, and that's kind of that's cool, but that's also kind of fucked up too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I am demonstrating great restraint by not making a heroin joke at this point.
Oh, well, I was
No,
gonna
no,
say,
I was gonna say, I mean,
say something about heroin, actually.
Okay. Well, go ahead,
yeah,
caller.
I was, yeah, well, I have a complicated relationship with like the idea of substance dependency, 'cause my brother died of a heroin overdose.
Oh my gosh,
I'm so sorry to hear
in
that.
2016.
2016.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was a hell of a year.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm making light of it.
No, I mean,
that was 8 years of my life, but I fortunately survived. I can relate though.
I make jokes about it all the time, not about my brother specifically,
course.
but about heroin. So it's not a big deal. It does get me sometimes, but
Yeah.
especially because there's a lot of heroin has showed up in a lot of weird ways in my life throughout time. But yeah, I have a weird relationship to substance dependency because of that. Because you know, I don't want to end up that same way.
Right.
And the book is actually partially dedicated to him too. I think he really would have dug it. And there's some stuff in the book about, you know, watching someone who's close to you sort of not be able to help themselves.
Is it older brother or younger brother?
Older brother, much older.
Brother.
Yeah,
Much older.
A half brother. Yeah.
Okay.
Is your brother George? Was your brother George?
George. Oh, no, George is my grandfather. Case.
Oh,
my
okay.
brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
George?
Yeah.
Okay.
My grandfather also died in 2016.
Oh, I'm
Jeez,
sorry.
really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a hell of a
Ugh.
year. Actually, yeah, I wanted my only regret in terms of that dedication page is it should be dedicated to 3 people. It should be dedicated to Case, George, and my buddy from grad school, Ryan, who killed himself the same year.
Oh my God.
He was an amazing writer, and it was, yeah, it's something that I still think about all the time, obviously. But yeah, it's just a real wave of tragedy.
Yeah.
We could also do a whole episode on suicidal ideation that could get really dark really fast. So we're going to avoid that, since this is technically part of your book tour. So.
Yeah, right.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, yeah, but you're mentioning like at the top, like you've had some like the, you know, like highest highs and like lowest lows, and I don't want you to get into the specifics of either of those, but can you talk a little bit about, since this isn't your first book, but this is your first novel, like what has the process been in terms of promoting this and like sharing with the world, and like, you know, I guess like dealing with feedback on what you've obviously put a lot of time into and have been wanting to do for a long time.
Yeah. Well, it's been super cool. It's like I had sort of picked as a semi-arbitrary thing that I wanted to publish a novel by the time I was 35. I'm 35. I published this novel. So I feel like I achieved the thing that I wanted to achieve.
That's awesome.
And you know, on the one hand, there's a lot of like excitement and pride associated with that. You know, when I like reread the parts of the book now, I'm like, oh, this is actually good. Like this book's actually good. And that's cool after doubting myself so much. And it's cool. You know, I was in New York for part of the book tour, and it was great to like have a bunch of old friends show up to the book thing, and also people that I didn't know who the publisher brought or whoever. I had a really cool talk at the book event there with Maddie Lubchansky, who's a really talented like writer and comic artist and stuff. And she interviewed me for that. It's really cool getting to meet her. That that's left me with a lot of energy. I went straight from there to Michigan and did a book event in Michigan. And 4 people showed up to that.
Book events, huh? Am I right?
But one of them was someone who used to read my blog back in the day.
Oh, beautiful.
And
That's
that,
so
like,
cool.
That like made me so happy that it didn't matter at all. Like, and the audience, for all that it was small, it was like great audience. Everybody had questions. Like, it ruled.
That's fantastic.
And so I've had experiences like that. I've also had at least one book event where the room just felt dead, just absolutely dead. And I sort of felt like I sort of felt like a presenter in a pyramid scheme where I was like, you had to buy my book because you're here. It doesn't matter whether you read it, you just have to buy it. That left me feeling really low. That left me feeling like a fraud and a scoundrel.
Yeah.
So like it's really both ends of the spectrum, especially because, once I crest the hill, I just see the next hill. I don't really like feel as if I've achieved something anymore,
Right.
because I've already achieved it. Right?
You've already
It's
done it.
behind me.
So then you're like, well, what's the next thing? Right. Well, what's the next goal?
Which makes it easy to feel like I'm right back where I started.
Right. I was going to say, like, I hope you can take some time to like internalize and like be so proud of like what you've accomplished. And then like that you did like set like that arbitrary goal, publish your first novel by 35, and you did it. Right. And you're like, you have like a big publisher, and you're like, your book is out there and being read, and like, people are somebody who like read your blog, like showed, you know what I mean? Like, I hope that like that I hope you can internalize and like feel like pride in that, because I think that's really incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. In my best moments, I do.
Yeah, I think we understand.
So for our listeners, do you want to give us a little bit of an overview, just kind of like the high level of what your book is about? And
yeah, let's move into the Two Truths and a Lie discussion.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So, Two Truths and a Lie is a cyberpunk noir story set in a nearish future Los Angeles that is partially underwater, where information has replaced money. People buy, sell, and trade Maoris. And it focuses on this nasty old man, this war veteran named Orvu, who kind of gets dragged into the middle of a high-profile murder investigation when it turns out it has something to do with an old lover of his. And it kind of goes from there. That's the book. How's that? I practiced that a lot.
It's a hell of a pitch.
I was going to say you did a great job.
Yes, please.
So I have not read the whole thing. Brett has read it twice. I have not read the whole thing, but what I have read, it was interesting. And the pitch is perfect. It was so interesting to me. And even the way that you described it just now, but like from what I read, like it makes sense that you've worked on games, because a lot of, and I mean this in a very positive way. I want to be clear. Like when I read this, I was thinking, I was like, oh, you know what? I could see a great game being based on this sort of thing. And to me, that's like actually like that's me like, giving a compliment, because I love adaptation. I love to see things like that. But in my head, I was kind of envisioning, I was like, this could be like a really interesting narrative game in some regards. And I am curious, like what your inspiration was in terms of how you were going about kind of creating the world that this takes place in, because it is near future, and what your process was in terms of coming up with like what's the technology that they're using, and what's kind of what are the differences and the similarities between what we have, and how did what was your process for coming up with that stuff?
Well, I definitely take it as a compliment that it would make a good game. I like games, obviously. I play a lot of games. And I think of the writing of a book, at least, as the playing of a game, to some degree. I had an instructor who I really admired in graduate school, who said basically that in order to write to the end of a book, you have to construct a sort of game for yourself. You have to have some rules that allow you to play out and generate the novel, because writing an entire book is like an impossible task to conceptualize, right? It's like
Yeah.
so many words and so many events and so much stuff. It's very hard to like hold in your head at once. But I think human beings in general, certainly me in particular, are able to hold very complex game structures in their heads and understand all of the sort of weights and balances and systems involved in a game. And so I kind of play these little games with myself, or sometimes rope other people into playing these games with me. So the original idea for the story came when I was in grad school, and somebody brought in. I went to art school. This is important for understanding this story, because in one of my classes, one of the other students brought in a book that she had sewed out of $1 bills, and she was like, "This shows how information has become our new currency."
Mm. It's totally an
And-
art school project.
Yeah, it's a very
It
much an
totally
art school
is.
project. And I was like, oh, but what if actually though? Like, what if for real? And so I started spinning out like, well, what would it actually take? And I've always really liked noir. A mystery seemed like a really natural place to explore that kind of thing, right? Because information is already so important in a mystery. And so I started trying to build this out, and it was really difficult to make it all line up, because it is very different from how our world currently works in some ways. In some
Right.
ways, there's a lot of overlap. But one of the things that I would do is I would talk to people about it, and I would tell them like, I've got this worked out. Here's how it works. And they would very understandably ask me a lot of questions about it, and I would not know the answers to those questions, but I would act like I knew the answers to those questions, and I would answer them. And by doing that enough times, I eventually sort of built out an understanding of how this world was supposed to work. And I built out the story by asking myself questions like that.
Is that what you
And-
mean when you say making it all line up? Just making sure it essentially makes sense and everything follows a thread, every little piece is.
Yeah, I try to be very meticulous about that. I don't think that that's a requirement to write a story. I don't think everybody has to be really meticulous about it, but I can't not be. I cannot allow myself to leave a loose thread or a plot hole. That kind of stuff really bothers me.
Yeah.
So like a lot of it was stitching up holes and patching things and bringing things together, which is tough because as I would start to revise something, if I changed one thing, then it, changes something over way in a different part of the fabric that I've got to like bring into line. Everything gets destabilized, and then it's gotta remake it all over again.
A friend of mine he's the author A. Raphael Johnson. He wrote a great book called The Through, which I really recommend. But he had a theater background, and so I'm obsessed with process, and I could ask you questions about process all day. Like I said
Same.
earlier, I'm going to just ask a couple only. But he had this really great. I use this all the time in my own work. He has this great way of going over his writing when he's done. Is like a theater person. He goes, I'm going to do a lighting pass. Now I'm going to do a wardrobe pass. I'm going to do a sound pass, right? Like I'm going to do all these passes, settings pass. So he's going through the book over and over with just that bit. It's a little different from making it line up, but just making sure that he's created the world that is as kind of full as it is in his brain, but has gotten it to the page. You're describing something that like fits into a category with that for me.
Ian Fleming would do the same thing. From what I understand, would write through the book and just get the plot beats in place. And then the second pass was like everyone's like what kind of watches everyone's wearing and like the cut of their suits and all of that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a really great quote that I like from Walter Mosley, who's a noir writer that I really admire. He wrote Devil in a Blue Dress.
Oh yeah.
A great book, or screenplay rather. Yeah.
And he was answering the question, how do you know when a book is done? How do you know when you're done drafting? And he said, what I would do is I would write a draft and I would read it. I'd see what was wrong with it and go back and fix it. And then I'd read it and I'd see what was wrong with it. and I'd go back and fix it. And then I'd read it again, and I'd see what was wrong with it. I'd have no idea how to fix it. And that's how I knew I was done. I was like, that I hold on to a lot because I can be such a perfectionist about things. And at a certain point, I just have to be like, the problems that remain are beyond my ability to solve.
Yeah. Yeah. But you also have to, I mean, the resilience that always amazes me about people who go through and finish a novel is like, you just described this cycle, but I always wonder, okay, when you hit that point where you're like, there's something wrong with it. That can be like an existential crisis, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
but then somehow you lift yourself up and go, I'm doing another pass. It's like almost like it's very masochistic.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to believe that there's something at the end of that, right? Like you have to, and this happens in making games too. Making games is a similarly torturous process. It can be.
With the extra layer of the studio.
Yeah, well, even if you're making a game by yourself, like games are so complex, and every game is different from every other game, even more so than every novel is different from any other novel. You're very much building the plane as you're flying the plane.
Yeah.
But the thing that helps with both of them, with any kind of creative project for me, is to have some spark somewhere of what this thing is about. Like William Gibson, I think, once said that he would write the first line of his book and he would never change the first line after he had written the first line. I can't do that. I have definitely changed the first line of everything that I've ever written, but there has to be something that doesn't change. There has to be something that gives the thing its identity that to hold on to, so that no matter how much it changes, no matter how many drafts there are, there's a way to know that I'm making progress.
Yeah.
Speaking of Gibson, okay, so I read a lot of cyberpunk, and I read a lot of Gibson. And when I first started Two Truths and a Lie, I immediately thought, this is Gibson-esque. And then I had to ask myself what that meant, because these days, like current Gibson, I don't even consider Gibson-esque. When I say Gibson-esque, I mean Mona Lisa Overdrive.
Right.
I mean, like early days. I mean, like way back to like 400 Boys, Bruce Sterling era stuff. Like that to me is like the what used to be called hard SF, like hard sci-fi. And that, like when I started Two Truths and a Lie, I was immediately imbued with this sense of the old school cyberpunk feel, but it's more developed. Like once you get into it, it's richer than old cyberpunk used to be. So I felt like you straddled the line between what I would consider quote unquote Gibson-esque and like a more heartfelt novel. So I guess the question would be like, how do you see this falling into kind of the pantheon of cyberpunk literature?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I definitely take it as a compliment to have it be described as Gibson-esque. Like, definitely I have been inspired by the velocity of Gibson's early writing, the way that his prose moves. One of those visceral experiences that I was describing earlier when I was talking about how books made me feel was Mona Lisa Overdrive. There's a passage in it. I can't even remember what the passage was. I remember where I was sitting when I was reading it. And I remember like closing the book for a moment and just going, because it just like had such energy.
Yeah.
But I think, that for me was a starting point in terms of one of my influences and how my prose writing developed over time. But it was very much a starting point for me because there are also things that I struggle with Gibson's early writing. I remain a huge fan of Gibson. I love some of his more recent work too, like The Peripheral. I find phenomenal.
Yep.
Some like Neuromancer, the first time that I picked it up, I got like a couple chapters in and I put it back down because there was this paragraph where like it's like half in reality and half in a hologram and you can't really tell what's going on because the prose is so dense. And I was like, I just can't parse this. This is stressing me out a little bit. And I put it down. I came back to it, I think, after I read Snow Crash.
Stevenson's
yeah,
a nice break from
yeah.
Gibson.
And I blew through. I love Stevenson too. And then I blew through Neuromancer and I kind of got it a little bit more. But yeah, I wanted to preserve the vividness and the momentum of the language, and create more clarity. But I also wanted to develop my own aesthetic. You know, Gibson's writing is very much like that. Early writing comes out of like, right? Isn't it like 80s Toronto street culture?
Yeah.
And I don't have any experience with 80s Toronto street culture, so it very much comes out of like my aesthetic more and the people that I grew up with and what grime meant to me growing up, because there's a lot of grime in the book for sure. And then, but again, like having that core of something to know what you're working on, part of the core of it for me is what I think of as the core of cyberpunk. It's not the chrome or the laser whips or whatever. It's the stories of people who can't afford space travel.
Oh,
Right, nicely said.
Yeah.
That's not original to me. I think Bruce Sterling wrote that in the introduction to Burning Chrome, but it's stuck with me, because it's like what it is about is it's working class science fiction. You know, like it's and that's what I've tried to hold on to, is like it doesn't have the same technology. You know, one thing that's really changed, I think, in the way that we think about cyberpunk is the concept of cyberspace, because cyberspace is no longer a place the way that it was when Gibson was first writing. Like the internet used to be a place that you went.
Yeah.
And now the internet is just sort of this like sludgy mist that surrounds us at all time. This sort of ever-present fog that both reveals and obscures. And so having it be more of a layer, more of an ever-present thing, that really changes the whole like way that a world works. And I think a lot of other things follow from that. And I think that's part of what is going on in Two Truths and a Lie, is that, you know, that technical world has so merged with the physical world that people are just, you know, buying and selling and giving up and trading their memories.
Yeah.
So one of the other topics that I wanted to broach was this idea of memories as currency, as opposed to traditional dollar bills. Like a memory can be worth more to one person than it is to another. And you, as any human being, you have kind of an array of memories to trade. And one of the memorable ones I can remember from the book is when Orv trades a memory of pre-flood LA, of like sidewalks and green spaces, with a woman who was alive then but didn't have the technology to capture that memory at the time. And that memory is the most valuable thing he can offer her, whereas it might not be worth anything to the next guy. But like he has and in the book, Orv is dirt poor. I mean, all things considered, he's barely surviving. He's living at the bottom of society. But he has a couple of memories that in the right context are super valuable. So how do you see the economic impact of having a memory versus what we consider currency right now?
Well, it definitely works differently than we're used to money working. Money is traditionally fungible. Every dollar is the same as every other dollar. But also, you know, money is a really elaborate fiction. Money, the idea in theory about money is that like I could go and turn it into gold if I really wanted to. That hasn't been true in a very, very long time.
For sure.
Right now it's just sort of like, well, why would you ever? You just trade the money. But kind of the way that the information functions in the book is as a more directly backed currency, right? Each piece of currency can be traded. They can just be traded by file size if that's what people want to do. A lot of the exchange takes place in the form of demographics because they are pretty fungible. It's just like a bunch of people's soft drink preferences or whatever, and you trade those back and forth, basically the way that you would trade fiat currency. But all data has an endpoint where it's uniquely valuable. Which means that like there is not a separate vault that all of the money corresponds to. The information is kind of its own vault. It carries its own vault with it. It carries its own value, because eventually this piece of information is going to be genuinely useful to somebody, which enables more of a kind of an anarcho-syndicalist government a little bit going on in this version of Los Angeles, where there doesn't need to be a central authority that says this information is valuable, because the information is all valuable to somebody.
Sure. Yeah, no, I like that.
What did you start with this book? Did you start with that? Did you start with that as this sort of rough idea, this kind of economy of memory, or did
Good
you?
question.
Yeah, where did it start?
The idea was I wanted information to be currency in some way. That was the kernel of the idea. And as I had to actually make plot decisions, it gradually became clearer and clearer what that meant.
Yeah.
Originally it was a little bit more depersonalized, if I'm remembering correctly. It was a little bit more like you had piles of data, but they weren't necessarily your memories. And then over time, I started to realize, like, part of the reason that we don't pay money for most information now is because it's infinitely duplicatable. And so to have information function as currency, it has to be handled better than NFTs were handled, where you could just
Sure.
right click and save the JPEG. Like, it has to actually be like almost an object that only one person can possess. And so that's kind of where the idea of taking and giving and removing memories came in.
Yeah.
Right, because when you pay someone a memory in this world, you lose that memory.
Right.
And it's not duplicatable. Is that, I can't remember, in the world of the book, is that a choice? Like, can memories be duplicated?
Memories cannot be duplicated if they are minted to trade.
Okay, so they are
as money.
they are the idea of NFTs, not the execution of NFTs.
Yeah. Imagine if.
Right.
In this economy, what would money laundering look like?
Oh, you'd have to read the book to find out.
Oh, good.
So another topic is the kind of queer love story at the center of this novel. And I read a lot of queer fiction, and the stuff I appreciate about the best of queer fiction is that it doesn't have to recognize that it's queer. It just sees, like, this is a man who loves another man. This is a man who can love either gender, all genders equally. Like, it doesn't have to be brought out as a you don't have to draw attention to it. It just is. This character isn't gay. This character is just a character. And Orv's love interest in this story is another man. But it becomes clear in the reading that Orv is not impervious to the wiles of the feminine kind. He is, as far in my reading of it, he's bisexual, if not pansexual. And I appreciate that that's never elucidated. Like, that never needs to even be stated. It just is. And from our pre-show conversation, my interpretation, and I don't need you to confirm or deny this, my interpretation is that you're a straight man writing queer fiction. And and you're you're welcome to debate me or to correct me on that. But I think it was a really well done queer love story.
Well, not that I have to answer your question, but the way I
You
would
do not.
answer your, I'm still going to.
Okay.
I am I am a cis man married to a cis woman who has loved men. That is how I would
Cool.
describe myself. Um, and or does not exactly one-to-one map to my own predilections, but because or is definitely a disaster pansexual. Uh,
Like that.
Did you create that?
No.
This is not a term I've heard, and it's an
No,
amazing
I
term.
haven't either.
I've heard disaster bisexual. I've never. I don't know that I've heard. But it's
I was
just,
gonna say I've heard
it's like,
disaster by disaster pan though. I like. I appreciate that.
yeah.
That's good.
I feel
Yeah,
like
that's
I
good.
feel like it's. I don't feel like that's much of an innovation to say that.
But I like
yeah.
the riff anyway. I'm just saying
Yeah.
It's a good riff.
But yeah, so he loves who he loves, and I think that I think I kind of took some inspiration from other noir for that. There's a Raymond Chandler book that I really love called Farewell My Lovely, and you think of these private detectives as like, oh, they're men's men, and they're making out with all the women, and they're and then they punch all the guys, and Philip Marlowe, for the most part, is like that. He's really kind of scornful and horny with all the women in the story at the same time. But there's this beautiful moment where he like meets this dude on the docks, this gorgeous man with violet eyes, and he like gets this guy's help to get him onto a boat, and they spend a long time in the dark on this boat. And he talks to the guy about how scared he is about this boat that he's going on to, and the guy is like comforting him and trying to take care of him. And he describes this guy. He keeps talking about his eyes, and he keeps describing how he's the nicest man that he's ever met, and like, and they touch and all of it. Like, and I don't know, I really don't know how intentional it is, but it felt like it had to be intentional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so there's this not weird, but like very interesting interplay of these private detectives who are very, very sort of isolated by their profession, isolated by some of the things that they've seen and experienced, and don't necessarily know how to describe themselves or how to relate to other people, how to be close to other people, sometimes find themselves being closest to people who I don't know, who share something with them that they're not even sure how to describe in themselves. And so I wanted Or to be complicated and fluid and tender more openly than like a 1950s noir hero could be.
Yeah. I think you did a great job. Like it reads like great queer fiction to me. And I know in your what do you call it? A soundbite synopsis that you gave, like queer didn't come up. And I feel like that's not it's not a focus of the novel, but I think it could sell that way.
Yeah, I mean, it is categorized and described that way. I feel a little bit uncomfortable describing it that way myself because I am a cis man married to a cis woman, and so I feel like I don't want to use that as a marketing crutch, even though
Right.
it's an element of the book. I
appreciate that.
I don't want to
I
do a
love
like
that.
how do you do fellow kids kind of thing, but I wanted to try and I wanted to give as accurate and genuine a depiction of love as I could.
How do you do, fellow disaster pansexuals?
Right.
Oh, that's great.
That's awesome.
All
Hey,
right.
wait, now I know we're running out the clock here, but I want to ask you about writing dialogue trees for video games. And if you can describe what one is, it's a little intuitive maybe to people, but describe what one is and describe the challenges of that or the experience of that as opposed to writing dialogue in a novel.
Oh, God.
Quicker than that.
Yeah, writing Writing dialogue trees is hard because you're anticipating a bunch of different possible routes in the conversation, and it's difficult to do that without diluting the effect of the conversation. One of the nice things about writing a linear conversation is you can pick the most dramatic responses to every moment in the conversation. And when you're writing a branching dialogue, if you want it to have the same impact, you need to have like 3 to 5 of the most dramatic possible responses all prepared. And so it's a lot of like holding a bunch of different possible versions of the conversation in your head at the same time. Like, can players end up here from different directions, and will they have different information? And do I need to keep this somewhat vague so that it can work in both of the situations? You know, what are the gather points that I can use so that this doesn't just become like an exponential mess that is like a million words for one-off conversation?
Yeah.
The tools are also important and usually kind of janky. They're finally making some better branching dialogue tools. Some I like more than others.
What have you used and liked? I've tested them just as a creative experiment.
My favorite that I've used is Inkle. I haven't gotten to use it much for work, but that's something to use if you like scripting generally. It's like a scripting language. So you're writing it out in a sort of text editor. Other people, I think, prefer a more visual scripting language like Twine. And there are a lot of visual scripting languages. The one that I use for work now, I think I can say, is OEI. It's Obsidian's internal dialogue engine. I don't know if you have access to it outside, but it is like a node-based system. You connect one node to another, and you make a web, and that's fine. Like it's decent for visualizing the conversation. I think I prefer, just because of my own predilections, I guess because I like writing prose, I prefer to have it just written out as text.
Yeah. Okay, one more. When you do level design, which you did with Redfall, I was asking, I had my son look through all of this. He gave me an interesting history of Redfall that we probably don't have to go into.
Yeah,
here.
we don't have to go into
sounds
that.
painful. I don't want to. I don't want to cause pain. But what is level design and how, as opposed to narrative design for people that aren't like immersed in this?
Well, Arcane was a really exceptional studio, rest in peace. Because it was a very much like level design driven studio. The way that I would describe it at the time was like, there are a lot of people at a game studio whose job is to make pizza toppings. Make like really delicious pizza toppings, or to make the crust of the pizza, to make the sauce of pizza, to make the cheese and everything. I, as a level designer, would assemble the pizza. I wouldn't even put it in the oven. I just assemble the pizza. QA cooks the pizza and serves the pizza. But level designer takes all of the beautiful things that everyone made and arranges them into a hopefully pleasing pattern.
That is a lovely way to describe it. Huh. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Can we, before Jeff has to go in 10 minutes, can we talk quickly about tools that you used for the actual novel itself?
Yes, and I have more time now. So
hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Fantastic.
So what platforms do you write on? What tools do you use? How do you, what all goes into bringing your novels together?
I discovered partway through the process of writing Two Truths and a Lie, a tool that I really like. I use Scrivener.
Yes.
So
I was
good.
really hoping you were going to say.
So good.
I was too.
I do have some problems with Scrivener.
Sure.
The fact that like you can't select text from like multiple sections at once, I find irritating. Like little irritating things like that.
The sync is bullshit. Can we all admit that their syncing stuff is?
I haven't used it in a
never
while. It
tried
was
it.
rough in the past.
Oh yeah,
It's still terrible. Don't do it. Is basically what they even tell you. They're like, yeah, Google Drive, it'll probably break. Dropbox is better. Don't use Box under any circumstances. iCloud is not a thing. But like, if you're ever wanting, at least for me, if I ever want to write something like on my iPad and then I want to access the same thing, I'm like, are you fucking serious? Anyway, that's my only gripe with Scrivener.
Yeah, I just use it on one computer instead. But I will I could talk shit about all the little details, but I know all the little shitty details because I use it so much. And I
Right.
use it so much
Exactly.
because it
it's
has a
great.
lot of functionality that I can't get anywhere else. Being able to
Yeah.
rearrange,
It's
being able to
really
rearrange
fun.
chapters and sections, being able to the feature that I use maybe the most other than that is taking snapshots of text before I rip out a bunch of it and change it. And I almost never actually use the snapshots that I take.
But knowing it's there.
Exactly. It allows me to do the messy work and not worry
I'm like
that
that
I'm
with
going to be
Git
like,
for sure.
that I'm going to be like, with my guts all the way up inside or my hands all the way up inside the guts of the cow and then be like, oh no, I shouldn't have done that.
We've all been there, Cory. We've all
Yeah.
been there with the
Yeah.
cow. I mean,
Yeah, with the cow.
Yeah.
We've all, hoofed amongst us. But and then the third feature that I love about it that really got me through. I have another manuscript that I'm polishing up right now, and I don't have a lot of time to write because I have my day job, and so in order to get through the first draft of this newer manuscript, I was like, okay, I am going to write 500 words a day, which is going to give which if I do that 5 days a week. And in no time, I'm going to have 70,000 words, which is what I'm trying to hit. I feel like that was like 3 or 4 months or something of writing. I don't know. You can do the math. I'm done doing the math. But I just put all of those. There's like a writing target tool in Scrivener. And I put all of those numbers into the writing target tool, and it would just be a little window every time I logged on, and I didn't have to think about it. I could see a little progress bar fill up, and it felt really good, and it got me through.
That's awesome.
To the end of the first draft, which is the first major hurdle.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
putting
Okay,
something
here's a
together.
question. I'm trying to picture. I'm imagining your Scrivener setup right now, and so you've got your book. You've got it up in the in the left hand column. You start at the top. You're working your way down. You see the chapters, but then there's like the dumping ground.
Oh yeah.
Where you can have all kinds of shit. What kind of did you have reference material in there? Is that where some of the older versions lived?
Well, the oldest versions of Two Truths and a Lie were just written in Open Office.
Yeah.
Which has its own problems, especially with loading large files.
Yeah.
As much as I love it, I try
Cory,
and use
are
Microsoft
you-
product.
I was gonna say, are you a Linux on the desktop user?
I
if you're
held
using
back that question.
I'm not. I
question.
have unfortunately I have Windows on all my machines. I try and use Microsoft products as little as possible, but I'm not quite well versed in computers enough to go without entirely.
He says
Well-
Open Office. Every one of our brains goes, Linux user.
I was gonna
No,
exactly.
It's just it's free. If this is
Right.
the reason that
Fair
I
enough.
use it.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I was doing it all in Open Office. It was a little bit rough. So the old versions are all like ODT files, and then yeah, like pieces that I cut out would go in that bottom section. But the other thing that would go in that bottom section is sometimes I just get stuck, and I still need to do my writing for the day. And so I'll just like open up a document in that notes section, and I'll just like freak out.
Yeah.
I'll just be like, oh, what am I doing? Oh, I don't know what this problem is. I'm going to try and let's try and, lay out at least the bounds of the problem so that I could start trying to solve it. And
Right.
that generally is pretty effective for me.
That's great.
Nice.
I love that.
You ever use? This is totally random, but have you ever heard? Oh, you're not a Mac user. You're a Windows user. And so I'll tell you, there's this app called Silver, which is
So good.
it's a text-based calculator app.
Yeah, it's really good.
And when I'm programming and I just get stuck on a calculation, I'll go into Silver and I'll just write out what's frustrating me, and by putting it into words and seeing it together, Silver can extract from that a calculation and give me the answer. And in the process, I'll figure out the formula I need for the function to come up with the answer I desire.
Like magic.
It's
pretty cool.
It's
amazing.
magic.
It is magic.
But I imagine that's the same as opening up a Scratch document in Scrivener and writing writing that you have a problem
Yeah.
and writing out the aspects of the problem and what it is you're trying to solve, and in the process coming out with potentially an answer for the problem.
Yeah. That's definitely only a part of the process.
I keep 2 documents open when I'm working on projects. One is a scratch pad, which is just to dump in whatever you want. And the other one is called distraction dump, so that every idea that comes that I want to go look up or whatever it is, I just put there. I know it's there. I can go explore that thing that has nothing to do with what I'm doing later. And the amazing thing is I never do it.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
going to
go back
say,
through
do
that
you ever,
document.
do you
gotta
ever,
get
No,
it
but
and
it
go
lets
back
me
to it.
keep going. It lets me keep
Yeah.
going, right? Like, it's amazing.
I will say the other tool that I use where my actual structured note taking is I use Obsidian
Yeah.
for notes.
I love Obsidian.
Seeing
Yeah,
is the best.
Yeah.
I love it.
I
love
finally
it as
went
well.
full in about 2 months ago, and it stuck this time.
I don't actually use any of the advanced features of it. Like I don't link
No.
internally or anything. I
Me neither.
just have a bunch of files in there. I use it for work too.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. It's one of the few tools that's like allowed like on our corporate systems, which are pretty stringent, and I can't access my corporate accounts on my personal devices, and so that does make it a little bit difficult for work stuff. I have to use a different a special version of Google Drive to sync things, but the fact that I can like use like a familiar tool is really nice, even if I can't access my stuff anywhere else, but that's okay because it's work stuff. But yeah, it's nice to at least be able to use like a
Yeah,
familiar
I
tool.
love that all the tools you're mentioning are cross-platform.
Yeah, totally.
So you're a Windows user talking to a bunch of Mac users, and we've all used
We're
all
all
the
using
apps
the
you're
same
talking
shit.
about.
Yeah. I mean, I think I want to believe that we're coming back out the other side of the era of like jealously guarded proprietary platforms.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I don't think we are, but I feel like the web has still sort of like, despite everybody trying to kill it, is still kind of, you know what I mean? Like
That's more what I mean. I don't
Yeah.
mean that those platforms aren't going to continue to exist and exert their influence. I think that there's just starting to be a growing appreciation again for having control over your own shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I agree with that. I agree
Yeah,
with that.
yeah.
And I feel like cross-platform, or at least like not being as you said, like jealously like guarding, for one or the other. It's getting better. Even with games, right? With things like the Steam Deck and stuff like that, making it at least more accessible to access games on other
Steam Deck?
platforms.
What is
Steam Deck?
Steam Deck.
The
Oh, I
Steam
think it's
Deck.
the
Sorry,
Steam
yeah,
Deck.
no,
Okay.
that was my sibilance.
Gotcha.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of tools,
Nice
Would you guys-
segue.
would you guys like to do a gratitude?
Hell yes.
Yeah.
Corey, you down for a gratitude?
Sure. but
Corey's like,
I
I've been
feel
doing gratitude for 10 mints.
Yeah.
I feel like I have
Yeah.
been.
And if Scrivener is your gratitude, we're good. I'll kick it off. My pick for the week, and I cannot remember if I've mentioned this before, but there's a tool called Sendy. It is a PHP server-based platform that is an alternative to MailChimp.
Yes.
And for, I think, $60 one-time fee, you get your own mail list server that uses Amazon's email service.
Mm-hmm.
So for about $1, you can send out thousands of emails to your list. It can keep track of your mailing list. So if you're a blogger or a content producer that wants to keep a mailing list where you have close contact with your fans, patrons, viewers, Sendy makes it like doing the same thing on MailChimp, in my experience. Like the NV Alt mailing list, the NV Ultra mailing list has about 13,000 subscribers. And it got to a point where if I wanted to send an email out to all of the people on the list, it would cost me $100. And it got to the point where I just couldn't afford to do it anymore, given NV Ultra's very extended development period, and complete lack of income. So
Not
now,
related.
and now with Sendy, I don't have to worry about it. For $1, I can email everyone on that list. And as I develop my own mailing list for like brettterpstra.com, which is a significantly smaller mailing list, but even as such, I can, for pennies, email everybody. So anyone who has a mailing list of anything over 100 people, Sendy is an amazing tool.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. I went to their website because it was the tool that I thought there are a couple of these like this, but I think this is the one that gets like the best reviews in terms of user interface. And like Brett, you're right there, like on their homepage, like one of your
Am I
tweets.
really?
Yeah, one of your tweets is like right there, like as like a. It's funny because our friend Cable Sasser is on there too, and our friend John Gruber. Like a lot of our people, like I'm looking at their thing, but if I scroll down, I was like, oh, yep. I was like, there you go, Brett Terpstra, cool.
Yep.
Brett Terpstra's in the pocket of big mailing list.
And it has a good API, so you can automate. Like I create when I email my brettterpstra.com mailing list, I write an email in Markdown with a couple of YAML headers with like email subject line and send date, and then I run it through a script, and it just sends it out automatically to whatever lists I need. So yeah, that's it. I'm done.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Christina, what do you got?
Okay, so I was actually, it was funny because before we started about this, I was hoping that we would get to talk about tools because that would be like a good gratitude thing. And Scrivener was going to be a thing that I chose, but I'm not going to choose that now because we already talked about our love of Scrivener. So, and Scrivener's great. And it is available on Mac, Windows, and iOS. Maybe Android. I have no idea. I don't use Android,
And
but
worth the price too.
definitely
It's
worth the
not very
price.
expensive.
Oh yeah.
Not very expensive, but it's like $60 or something. And like I think it's a good app. And any of my criticisms about it are because I really like it. I really like also like its corkboard like mode. I don't know, just in terms of thinking stuff out. Like I think it's a really good tool. But no, my pick. This is going to be nerdier. So I can't remember if we've talked about this or not. So I don't have a problem with the command line. But I was like there's a cool homebrew GUI app called Cork. I don't know if we've talked about it. It is, you can compile it yourself and build it for Xcode. So Homebrew, Cory is a package manager for Mac OS. The Windows equivalent is called Winget, and it's actually pretty great. But basically a way to easily install software if you don't want to have to go to websites or other things. And or if you want to get things that might not be installed in a traditional way. But Cork is an app that
Are you saying cork or quark?
Cork, CORK.
Oh, okay.
Not taking us back.
So it's the whole thing is that like if it's homebrew is having I guess casks and is all about like the brewing idea, then like Cork is I guess taking that same kind of metaphor, but it's the website is corkmac.app. But basically it's just a really nice GUI app for homebrew, and I really like it. And it wasn't that expensive, but like I said, it is completely open source. So if you want to compile it yourself, you can. But I really
Nice.
like it. Yeah.
You can also install Cork with homebrews.
Yes, you
so
can. Yeah, you can
just brew and sell Cork, and you're good.
Yep, exactly. And if you like it, then yeah, you can pay for it. It's like 25 euros or something, or pounds, like through their website. And
In Seattle, they use euros.
well, no, the developer is
Yes,
is
yes.
is British, but like but no,
I
it's really cool because you can also like you can update packages like from like the menu bar if you don't want to have it open, and you can like access basically all of the homebrew features that you would otherwise have to maybe deal with the command line for. Anyway, that's my pick this week is Cork.
Very nice.
Awesome. I've been installing homebrew stuff sometimes through Raycast lately, which is kind of
Oh yeah,
nice,
no,
but
I
still-
love that the Raycast integration is really good too. Yeah.
Yeah. In the end, I always prefer just going back to the command line. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah,
anyway. Okay.
I will say while you mentioned Raycast real quick, just for the Windows users out there, there's a free open source project that Microsoft actually runs, but they're really good people called PowerToys. And PowerToys Run is their version of like Raycast or Spotlight or whatever. And I know that team really well, and they're fantastic. And so they're actually even building some stuff in to do some solver-like stuff in terms of calculation things, in terms of being able to use natural language. So
Oh, cool.
Power Toys is we've mentioned that before, but I'd give that another shout out for anybody on Windows.
Nice. Well, I could go, and then Cory, if you still have one, it could be a Cory Graptitude sandwich. So I'm just a slight context, but I'll be brief about it. So I work in my work. I work with interviews all the time. I do interviews. I work with other people's interviews on specific topics. I'm a researcher and a kind of program evaluator. So right now, I have hundreds of hours of interviews with foster youth. I have many hours of interviews with young people who have been in the juvenile justice system. I have interviews I've been doing with agronomists. And for years, as I've worked with interviews, first as a journalist and now doing what I'm doing now, when I could, what I would do is I would pay somebody to transcribe, and I'd pay somebody different to read the transcript along with the audio and correct it. Always someone different. And when AI came along, I've been more than a year now, I've been trying to get to what felt like a really as predictable as is realistic workflow to be sure that some of the jargon and some of the dialect stuff, anything like that, is being caught. And so that I can, before I'm even reading through a transcript, I can get it to as good a place as I can. And ideally, as good a place as it would have been with a second person, which was still imperfect. You could have maybe done a third, and then you would have had it perfect. And so my pick is actually Notebook LM.
Yeah.
So I've been using Claude, ChatGPT. I've messed with so much of this. I actually was on the phone with Merlin yesterday, just learning his workflow, because I'm trying to get this workflow just right. And I just had this kind of breakthrough. And the reason I select Notebook LM is that one thing that ChatGPT is really, really bad at, or good at, depending on how you look at it, is verbatim quotes. If I were to give it a transcript and even just say, do you know what a verbatim quote is? Start there. Give me an example, 3 examples of verbatim quotes. Okay, if you win that one, then I say, now I want 5 verbatim quotes on this topic, whatever, right? Always making shit up. Always, no matter how much I banged up against it. Notebook LM is amazing because it will give me verbatim quotes with a footnote that I can hover over and see exactly the point in the transcript it pulled it from.
Nice.
And so that I can be sure right away, because to be clear to anybody who might be in the field and worrying, I don't use quotes just because ChatGPT gave them to me. I go and I find them, and that's how I know it's making them up. And Notebook LM has been great. And what I've been doing, which I've tried elsewhere, but it works better with them, is I just feed it all these documents that are in the relevant area that have all the various jargon terms, whatever it is, frameworks, all that stuff. And I'm able to say, hey, reference this stuff and transcribe this, and then clean it using that, those reference materials. And I still end up using a combination of that and Claude. Both are just really good. But Notebook LM, which I had tried early, had set aside, but they've now added some features, including just a huge, a very generous limit to how much context documents you can give it. Just so generous, right?
Yeah. No, I
Christina.
I do know. Well, because my team does not work on Notebook LM, but it uses the underlying Gemini stuff. That is an important thing to note. You mentioned about the context. That is one of the really good things, is you can upload like hundreds and hundreds of pages worth of stuff. And what's nice about that is that, especially if for what you're doing, like transcripts and whatnot, you don't have to, it will be able to kind of keep that in its memory right then and there, so you don't have to do separate RAG stuff. If you're wanting to get specific things, you can just, one shot all of your, files or transcripts or whatever, and ask questions about it, which is really useful.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's become part of the stack, because look, I have 4 pinned tabs in my browser all the time: Notebook LM, Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT, because at this point in the development of all this stuff, trying to get to where you want to get usually involves kind of chaining some of those together.
Totally agree.
So anyway, I really have appreciated coming back to Notebook LM and being like, this is now exactly what I need.
That's awesome. That's great. And if you have further feedback, let me know, and I'll get it to the right people. But
okay.
yeah. So, Gemini has a good YouTube support now too, both in the consumer app and in the AI studio thing. So if you give it a link it can like go through the transcript of like what's, in that link, or give you a summary, or give you,
so
like
nice.
timestamps and stuff. And I think it works for private stuff too. I'm not sure. So that's something to think about. just in
Here's
terms
the
of stuff.
feedback. Let me fucking change the word spacing, the line spacing, and the fonts, because the default sucks and you can't change it at all. That's my only. You go to Claude and it's beautiful, right? Like,
No,
but
that's really good feedback. I will
very
give that to
ugly.
other people.
All right, well,
Cory,
done.
in case you didn't pick it up from context, Christina's new job is at Google.
Oh, cool. Congrats.
Oh, thanks.
Ask her anything and she can answer. She'll just
And
answer with AI first.
And and you ask me anything, and I can be like, don't know if I can answer that.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
All right, Cory, take us home.
Well, I will say first, one thing that I would have liked to discuss a little bit. Unfortunately, we're going to be out of time, but I would have liked to talk about the way that AI shows up in Two Truths and a Lie also. 'Cause I would have liked to talk to you guys, because you have a very like practical, on the ground understanding of AI, which
Now I really regret we didn't get to that.
no, look, it's fine. Just have me on again.
Yeah, we'll have you on
fine,
again. Actually,
fine.
genuinely, we'd love to have you
Seriously?
on.
Would you come on
Come
again?
back. Like I said, I like talking to people. So yeah, bring me back.
We'll cut you
I'll
at the
talk
end of
anytime.
your promotional
All right,
period.
let's
and
do
see how
a
you're
part
doing.
two.
There
Let's
is
do a
no.
part two.
It's so cute that you think the promotional period ever ends.
No, that's true. That's true. Sorry. It's my first day.
As far I was like frantically looking through apps on my phone, trying to figure out which one gave me a hit of dopamine.
It's what we
because
all
it's
do
like-
at this point.
Yeah.
Literally,
Yeah.
that you just described how gratitude works on this show.
Yeah, hell yeah. So the one that finally stuck out for me is I went to the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco last week.
Yeah.
And I'm so tired, but it was very fun. But on the way there, I realized that once again I had forgotten to print out business cards. Ordinarily, what I do is I just get nice watercolor paper, cut it into the shape of a business card, and write my business cards by hand.
Nice.
That's really
people
cool,
find-
actually.
People find it very striking, and so
Yeah, I was gonna say, like that's one
Yeah.
of those things where like it's like the reverse American Psycho thing where you're like actually like having this is the most impressive part, like this is the biggest flex to have this
Yeah.
really pretty handwritten card versus my perfectly laserly printed on
And I think my handwriting is nice. So it works. It also, like, people say to give out your business cards like candy. I would rather be thoughtful about who I give my business cards to.
Mhm.
But this year I didn't have the paper on hand, or at least I couldn't find it. And so I reached for another option, and I ended up with this app called Blink with a Q.
Okay.
Link.
BLINQ.
I have seen this, yeah.
And it makes a business card. It lets you make a little business card, and then it gives you a widget too, where you can put a QR code on somewhere on your phone. So I just had like a separate pane on my phone that was just the QR code. And so I would unlock my phone, go to that thing, people could scan it, it would take them my business card, and I could put whatever information on it. I could make it look nice. And it wasn't just a link to my LinkedIn, which, as much as it's fine to connect with people on LinkedIn, I am trying to create as much of a like network of influence outside of commercially top-down controlled platforms as I can.
Yes.
Yep.
I want to have people's emails. I already get the maximum number of spam calls possible, so I don't really care about people having my phone number.
Right.
Right.
So like I want to be in direct contact with people. This allows me to give out direct contact information and get back direct contact information too, because when people scan it, they get a little button to download my contacts, and just like it, get the whatever the contact file is.
V card.
Yeah, you get a V card instantly, and then it prompts you to put your information back in, and then it sends me an email with whatever contact information they put in.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, it also looks like they support like Apple Wallet and Google Wallet, which that's really cool.
Yes.
So you can share this
Yeah.
as like a wallet item. That's because I've wanted to do that before for various things. That's really, really cool.
Yeah,
That's
it
really
felt
cool.
it felt very easy. It took me like 10 minutes to set up, and it immediately ended my panic about business cards. So like that's why when I was scrolling through my apps, I was like, oh, this one actually did me a real solid recently. So
That's
we'll
awesome.
talk about-
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's great.
I would tack on last time I went to a conference, instead of printing business cards, I developed a QR code that downloaded my V card, and I made it into my iPhone's wallpaper,
Yeah.
like the lock screen wallpaper.
Yeah.
So when someone
Oh, look
wanted
at
my
you.
info, I would just I would just hit the wake up button on my phone.
That's
They
so
would scan
smart.
my screen and they would get my V card info. It did not have the added benefit of requesting their info in return. It was a one-way transaction, but it worked out pretty well.
Like so much
Yeah.
of this life.
All of my QR codes on business cards go to my website /QR, and then I just have an htaccess file that redirects
It's the
/QR
most Brett thing ever.
to whatever place I want people to go. So usually it goes to like some old about.me page.
Yeah. Or like
But I
Lemon
can, like-
Party or
Yeah,
something
like
like
I
that.
can redirect that to whatever the current hip like about page kind of thing is, or LinkedIn or whatever I want.
Nice.
So just like all QR codes go to that one URL, and then I can change where that URL goes.
That's cool.
Nice. That's a
Weird
good one.
tip.
That's a
Weird
good one.
tip. Sorry.
No, that's a good one. I feel like you could use like the Blink thing. And now I'm like on Blink's website. They sell like NFC business cards. So you could like print a custom business card that you could put all your stuff in. And then when somebody brings their phone up to it, it'll just transfer that information like wirelessly. That's actually kind of
Huh.
hot.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Well, great pick.
Okay.
There's a free version though.
Yeah, no.
Just
I was-
to be clear to
Yeah,
anyone.
yeah, yeah. No. It looks like it has like a full free thing. I was just noticing, and it was inexpensive, like $14 to get an NFC business card. And I was like, actually, that's not a bad idea. Like that's actually kind of a cool, like have one, that way you carry one card instead of like 100.
Yeah.
But yeah,
All
that's
right.
cool.
Well, in closing, I would like to recommend that everyone go out and buy Two Truths and a Lie. And I do not say that lightly. Like, seriously, I did not have to read it twice to do this podcast, but I did because it was that good.
That's awesome.
I would love to see an audiobook version of it.
There is an audiobook version of it.
Is there?
Yeah,
Well,
it
he's
came
literally
out-
just saying, show it
It
to
came
me.
out at the same time as the book. Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Did
all right,
did
so-
you do the reading or did someone else?
I did not. I'm not quite grimy enough. I got a very accomplished voice actor named Tim Lunabos.
Nice.
Who is he did a really good job with the noir voice of it.
Oh, I'm going to go get that too. I want the whole time I was like, I would love to hear how an accomplished audiobook reader would intone this line. I also always read books from, like, in my mind, I'm always trying to convert it to a screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how would I demonstrate this? Yeah. And it gets nuts. But anyway, please, everyone, check out Two Truths and a Lie. It's so good. And thanks, Cory, for being here.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks
Cory.
for having me. It was great getting to
Pleasure.
know all of you.
And
Likewise.
we are going to take you up on a part 2.
Great.
We'll be in touch.
Anytime.
All
let me
right.
know.
Everyone, get some sleep.
Some sleep.
Ugh,
some sleep.
See ya.
The system is going down now.